It's really great for me to be here. I'll explain why, but a lot of the things that I used to live here, I've got a lot of friends here, though they'll deny that if I acknowledge them publicly. I think you'll find that, I've really enjoyed today. I think it's been fantastic. And what I like about what we've talked about is that at the heart of everything that everyone said, we've looked at creativity as a means to actually affecting more than just communication, but almost every aspect of society. And it's been really fantastic. And I'm just apologetic that the next 45 minutes are going to be a real disappointment to you, but we'll see what we can do. Originally, this presentation was going to be called, If Henry Ford Was Alive, I'd Spank Him on the Bum and Make Him Sit on the Naughty Chair. Like Jess, I gave that ages ago, and then I went, what the fuck was that about? And I spoke to my wife before I came here, and I told her, and she just goes, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, I've sort of got a meaning behind it. She goes, no, it's rubbish, change it. So I've changed it to creativity as a weapon of mass construction. I genuinely believe the communication industry is one of the best placed industries to help both business and society. I just think we're not very good at doing it, and I think we've got to reawaken that, because I genuinely think that we're better placed than many other organizations. I think it's only fair that you know sort of some of the things I'm going to talk about or not talk about so you can leave, though I do say if everyone goes, I'll be really upset. So three reasons why. The first one is I am married to an Australian woman. I have a home in Australia. I'm even a PR of Australia, but I am British, and we beat you at the Ashes. So I'm very apologetic about that. The second one is I am from Nottingham, which means I swear way too much. It's not my parents' fault. It's Nottingham's fault. If you have a nervous disposition, I apologize now, but we just have to get over it. And finally, you know what? Working for Wieden and Kennedy is a bit of a curse, because I know none of you are here to hear anything I've got to say. It's just the words Wieden and Kennedy. But we also have the global head of creative talent here. And because I don't want her to tell Dan what I'm about to say, I would publicly like to announce this has got basically nothing to do with Wieden and Kennedy. It'll all be about me. So let's deal with that. We are fucking awesome. You should know everything about us. And we're a lot of fun. And yeah, that's all you really need to know about Wieden. So I'd just like to start by saying I genuinely believe the communication industry, or advertising industry, or whatever term you want to use, is here to make our clients more money. There is a choice, though. You can either do it by brainwashing people, or you can by doing things that enthuses, engages, and motivates. And we choose the latter, as do lots of agencies. But absolutely, at the heart of it, we're here to make our clients rich. If we don't do that, nothing happens. The good news for us is that people are really turned on by brands at the moment. Really turned on. Obviously, that's not a life-size image of me, but we'll get through that. But it's fantastic. People are really turned on by brands. They've got more importance in people's lives than ever before. In fact, it's probably the most brand-literate generation on the earth. And it's not about having the, what brand to have. It's actually about what brand not to have. What's the wrong brand? To the quote earlier today, give somebody a music player that isn't an Apple and just watch it being thrown back in your head. You know, everyone's very aware of these things. The other thing is, hallelujah to digital, because they brought back the value of creativity in people's minds. And that's, you know what, we should be kissing their feet. And, you know, it's a fantastic thing, because creativity, in the truest and broadest sense of the word, can change everything. And thirdly, Adland does have an incredibly long heritage of making culturally and commercially valuable ideas. So I'm not actually going to do, as I said, a big Wieden thing. There's nothing more boring than creds, I think, when a person stands. But I do have to say, whilst Nike don't owe everything to Wieden and Kennedy, and we would never say that's the case, the fact that the development of Just Do It and a brand that still has the same energy today as it did when it started, I think is testimony to what we have contributed to that brand. And that just shows that fundamentally something that used to make rubber-soled shoes, which now is actually infiltrated society and means something. That's the power of an idea and how you can develop that over time. The bad news, though, and of course there's always bad news, starting with the project. Oh, there we go. There are very little ways to make people do anything. Like, my wife can't even make me do the washing up. So, you know, advertisers have got a big problem. And advertising is having a hard time, without a doubt. The second point is that technology has changed almost every aspect of how we live, either physically or emotionally. I do think that we spend far too much time just celebrating the positives of what digital does. And I'm a huge advocate of digital, and I've been involved in digital for quite a long time. But I also think there is a byproduct of that that is manifesting in changes in society that aren't positive. And we need to understand that because we need to make sure that we don't go too far down the path and then it all comes and bites us on the arse. But quite possibly the thing that should upset Adland the most is that the greatest brand growth of the last 10 or 15 years hasn't come from us. It's come from new product development. And that's why I'm a big believer that if you work in an agency, you should basically not give a shit what J. Walter Thompson are doing, and you should be giving a huge shit what Google and Apple are doing. That is who our competitors should be. Because they create stuff that makes a change, and too much advertising just creates noise. It doesn't have to be that way. We have a long heritage of it not being that way. But I think, to Chaz's point, even though I'm going to disagree with him later, but he's a friend, so it's okay. To Chaz's point, I think too much communication is done for completely the wrong reasons. And that's really why everyone keeps going on about the age of the idea. And I understand that. An idea is basically the last legal means we have to change the world, regardless of money, heritage, or distribution. I always love that a woman who lived in a bedsit in 8 years has amassed more money than the Queen of England in 800 years and has fundamentally made reading popular against every single government attempt to do that around the world, and that's J.K. Rowling. I think that's fantastic. You know, I also think that an agency in Malaysia had, I think it was LG, came to them and said, we want to do a mobile phone. They said, you know what? Your phone's exactly the same as everyone else. And they said, okay, well, what would you do? And they said, well, we're in Malaysia. It's a Muslim country. What if you actually had a digital compass so people knew which way to pray? And they sold 2.5 million phones off that idea. That's fantastic. And I think, and I'm not saying this because Sudeep's here, but I think the VB chip stuff is fucking fantastic. It makes people do stuff. But the thing that's really at the heart of this is its creativity in the truest sense of the word. It is an idea that solves a problem, not an ad. Then, whatever that might be, is fine. Whatever communication channel you use, fine. But at the heart of it, you've developed something that's actually going to make something happen as opposed to hope that something happens. Now, I'd just like to point out, if there's any agency people or clients here or research, I'm assuming that what I'm about to say won't affect you, because if you're here, you've probably got what I believe is the right attitude. However, if I'm about to offend you deeply in the next few slides, I apologize in advance. Okay, so this is my Jerry Maguire moment, okay? The first one. I find it quite humorous how agencies bang on that we're here to solve business problems, and then they always do a fucking ad. And I have to say, the Gruen transfer, actually it's not the Gruen transfer, it's the people that appear in the Gruen transfer fuck me off. But no, it's a really serious reason though, because what they're doing is, they are actually telling people out there, don't use advertising agencies, don't trust advertising agencies. It's not the show's fault, but every time they put out the weekly challenge where they want to solve something, where they could do anything, they go, here's an ad. It's actually perpetuating the myth. We are far cleverer than that. But in our quest to have our 2 seconds of fame, we've sold ourselves down the river. It's not the Gruen transfer's fault, it's fucking great TV. But I think it's a really major issue because we keep talking about solving ideas and we always come back with an ad. And that's why I keep saying, find out what the problem is, develop a solution, then amplify that solution through comms. But the problem is, too many people go, here's the problem, advertise. I'm a big fan of advertising, but it's got to have a soul to it. So I have a real issue with too many agencies saying stuff and then just going for the lowest common denominator or the easy path. But to be fair, I think clients have a lot of issues. Because too many clients are actually describing exactly what they want. They're not saying, we have a problem with shampoo. How could we get more people to wash their hair twice a week? They're going, we would like to do a shot where a woman lets her hair go out in a beautiful fashion, and we want to make sure that the hydration qualities of it are promoted. It's like going to the doctor and prescribing your own medicine, then telling the doctor he's an idiot, you know? And then the worst bit, oh my God, is when you get actually predetermined processes. Nobody actually cares what the result of the process is. It's, we want to know what your process is. And to Chaz's point, absolutely, if we follow the same process every time, we're going to get the same result. So Adland has a lot to blame. Clients have a lot to blame. We have to work together. But then there's research companies. I am a huge fan of research, good research. And again, this is like a Venn diagram where everyone's connected, but so much research is focused on a particular aspect of the purchase cycle that it actually forgets to actually understand the influence or issues that people have in their life, which means that ultimately you're never actually dealing with the reality, you're dealing with dreamland. So if we really do believe in ideas, and we all say we do, and I think we do, because there's too much stuff out there that we nod our heads to and go, that's awesome, and the results back it up. It really is time to shit or get off the potty. It really is, you know? We can't keep doing this. People have been banging on about ideas for 20 years. It's time, you know? So that's my Jerry Maguire bit done. I would like to just publicly announce again, this is Rob Campbell, not Wieden and Kennedy, just in case, Melanie, just in case. So what I'd like to do now is basically what I think are 10 factors. I've put rules there, but mainly it's just so the line would go into the R. But there's 10 factors that I think help do great stuff, genuinely do great stuff. To be honest, a lot of these have been said by everyone else, so I could just stop and just run through it. But the first one is dream bigger. I really think we've got to dream bigger. And I think it was Jess's point. You know, if you just do a campaign that's based on the word campaign, you're basically dealing in a 4-week cycle. You have to deal in something that actually has a higher goal. So I've got a place in mind that I think is actually the greatest example of creative vision in the world. It's a country that I think is the greatest example of creative vision in the world. Anyone want to have a guess? Okay, anyone else? Sorry? Okay, anyone else? Okay, well, the first person was right. I genuinely believe Singapore is the greatest example of creative vision in the world. The reason I say that is Singapore, like if I put an atlas in front of you and said you had an hour to find Singapore, you'd still be looking. It's minute. You know, it's got no natural resources. It's got nothing. And yet, in 45, 46 years, it's got a place in the world that is actually very well defined. Because what Lee Kuan Yew did was he knew what he wanted Singapore to be, which was basically a self-sufficient country. And so everything he did was about building towards that. So has anyone been to Singapore here? Okay. You'll know that the journey from the airport to the actual city is probably the only place on earth where it's beautiful. It's beautiful. But that was actually planned. Because he knew, as foreign investors were coming in, if they didn't feel comfortable and safe from the very first frame of reference, it was all going to collapse. He also knew that if he didn't have a port that was ultra-efficient and actually able to fulfill any order, people would immediately put it down. He over-invested in that to make sure it's right. He has continually done things to ensure that that island has the right to survive. Survive, not thrive. It is thriving, but to survive. And that's why having an airline called Singapore International Airways that is probably, if not the best, certainly one of the best, and is ultimately the UN representative of Singapore, that's fantastic. Because I apologize if anyone works at Qantas here, but I fly a lot, and Qantas isn't very good. If they're the Spirit of Australia, we're doomed, you know? We're fucking doomed. So I think Singapore is an amazing place, and I'd just like to point out that's actually the only reference I'm going to give you to Asia. But I want to actually address what I think is a really important point. I genuinely love Australia, and I really hope that one day I get to move back here. But the myopic approach that so many in the industry here have towards anything other than London and New York is going to kill this creative industry. Without doubt, the terms of creative quality in Asia is not as good as in other markets in the world. However, they are the absolute power base. They already are the biggest economy. I was in a meeting recently with this American, and he said, listen here, buddy, you know, you remember this. We're the biggest economy in the world. Your lot are only the second. And And I said, well, no offense, but they actually own $1.7 trillion of your debt, so they actually are the king. You know, we cannot. Has anyone actually worked in Asia here? Great. Has anyone worked outside of Australia here? Great. I reckon if I taught you all individually, unless you were stationed at, I don't know, Ogilvy, Iraq or something, you would go, there are beautiful elements about being home and hugely frustrating elements. We have to embrace the bigger picture. We have to. Asia is an amazing place. I work in Asia and I'm based in Asia, but I do lots of stuff on a global basis, so I travel a lot. But I find Asia astounding. And the only reason I'm not going to go through a load of ads here is because I genuinely worried that you'd all switch off and go, I'm not interested anymore. But it's a really important point. So I encourage you to embrace the place up north, because if you don't, we're all in trouble. Okay, the second point is embracing culture, not category. I've been a huge believer in this for about 10 years. I spent a lot of time trying to really get a grip and understand this. The trouble is, in the last few years, the word culture has become a buzzword. And so people go, yeah, culture, culture. It's not culture. That's like saying Chinese people like rice. That's the culture. No, it isn't. Any more than Australians like beer. That's just what they do. It's not the culture. Understanding why people do stuff is actually the culture. And what I find really interesting in this is that you can then find unexpected relevance. You can find something that's got nothing to do with your category or your brand, and you can actually understand how that can relate to something that you need to have happen. Because you're talking about something that's deeply entrenched in the fabric of society, something that actually influences the emotion as opposed to just being the emotion. I talk about this too much. I wasn't going to use this example, but quite a few years ago, I got approached by a moped company. I have to be really careful because I said too much at another presentation. I got absolutely bollocked by them. But so I got approached by a moped company, and they were quite interested in looking at how they could improve their sales in a particular market. And you know what? We did the usual subjects. But then I said, would it be possible that we could maybe have a look at what we could do if we literally had freedom? And they said, yeah. I said, I'm willing to do it for free. I said, fine. So I got a film crew to go and film. It's in Vietnam. So go and film Vietnam. And the thing that we came back with was the roads in Vietnam are really bad. So whatever moped that we wanted to create would have to have a fat tire to overcome that. And they flood. The roads flood. So you would need to have a higher wheelbase. And as you can see from that picture, there isn't really a concept of one person on a bike. So it would definitely need to have a longer seat. And they use them almost like lorries. You know, so we wanted to put hooks everywhere. And we knew the price point that people would accept. But what I went back to the designers with was, I want you to build me the first 4x4 vehicle, but on 2 wheels. And that was actually the brief. We've actually gone through all the test stages, and then for a bunch of other factors, which I'm legally not probably allowed to say, is being held back. But what that will do is that's actually targeting a country, not a moped rider. And to Chaz's point, by actually looking in a different way, we got a very different solution. Because if we looked at all the research that they'd used to develop their product in the last few years, it was all about micro degrees of change. How far do you like the brake? How much color do you like? But that's not going to attract more people. That's just going to get people to buy it again. And we needed to get more people. So I'm a big believer in looking at culture, not just the category. Focus on the prize. There you go. Oh, that's the England cricket team. I don't even like cricket. I don't know what I'm doing that really. So one of the phrases that does anyone work at PhD here? No? Oh yeah, I apologize for the fucking awful video your guys put out. It's a disgrace to your company because you're very good. There's two, no, they are very good. I just find it amazing people would do that. There's a big phrase in the industry today which is about media neutrality. And it's immediately, you've basically said, we're going to do media. We just might do different media. It's wrong. We have to focus on what the goal is. Then we can work out all the other stuff. I cannot tell you how happy I was when Jess started talking about insight stuff, because I think she's absolutely right. And too often we just jump for the opportunity. The example I'd give is Bank of America change. So I arrived in Australia on Sunday. And the first thing I saw was an NAB ad that said, we've broken up with the other banks. Do you honestly think people are going to move over to the NAB because they've got a fucking billboard that says that? Come on. what Bank of America did was they realized they had to prove it to move it. And so what they did was they studied people who were on a budget, and they realized that people who actually are in that situation round up figuratively in their head so that they never go overdrawn. And what Bank of America said was, I'll tell you what we'll do. As soon as you take money out of your account, we'll automatically round it up for you, and we'll put it in a high-interest savings account. So we will help you save without even having to try anything. So it actually didn't take much for them to do. And they got 2.5 million more people because Bank of America proved what they were going to do, didn't just rely on the ads. And then guess what the advertising did? The advertising amplified a fucking great idea as opposed to simply promoted either a bland statement or something that wasn't going to address the actual issue. Which leads to making it real. Chaz showed the Tesco's ad. I personally think Tesco's are the most creative company in the world. Lots of people disagree with me, that's fine. But I think what they do is, too many people think of it as experiential marketing. They don't. They do it as brand belief marketing. That they are never going to say, we have done enough to keep our customers loyal. There's this general attitude where I've done something once a year to make people like me. But Tesco's go, no, we have to prove it every single time. And one of the best examples, and to be honest, it links with the culture, not category, was a promotion they did in the early 90s for computers for schools, which basically allowed parents to take control of their kids' future. In some respects, it was social marketing before social marketing as a term was really embraced. And it was the platform that built the Tesco's brand. And now there's papers that say they're more important and influential than the British government. That's not that hard, to be honest, at the moment, but it's still a pretty powerful thing for a supermarket chain. If you ever want to see creativity and intelligence, studying them is a great thing to do. And then be culturally provocative. With the utmost respect to all the other agencies, I think Wieden and Kennedy are the greatest agency at doing this. I genuinely think our ability to be culturally provocative is at the heart of everything we do, and I think we do it better than everyone else because it's the basis of how we work. Our attitude is, if you are going to do traditional advertising, and I am a huge advocate of traditional advertising, and when I say traditional, I mean the whole gambit. I'm not just separating digital, I'm just talking about classic communication models, whatever channel you would use. If you're going to do that, you better fucking do something that's going to make people feel something to move. Otherwise, it's pointless. That's also the ability to develop new products. But I'm going to show you an ad. And it's the only ad in terms of film that I'm going to show you from, actually, I'm going to show you. It's something that we've done very recently, and it was for the Super Bowl. Let's just show it first, and then we'll talk about it. Can we just run the video?
I got a question for you. What does this city know about luxury? Huh? What does a town that's been to hell and back know about the finer things in life? Well, I'll tell you, more than most. You see, it's the hottest fires that make the hardest steel. Add hard work and conviction, and the know-how that runs generations deep in every last one of us. That's who we are. That's our story. Now, it's probably not the one you've been reading in papers, the one being written by folks who've never even been here and don't know what we're capable of. Because when it comes to luxury, it's as much about where it's from as who it's for. Now, we're from America, but this isn't New York City, or the Windy City, or Sin City, and we're certainly no one's Emerald City.
This is the Motor City. And this is what we do.
I fucking love that ad. I fucking love that ad. Has anyone seen Al Pacino's speech in Any Given Sunday? Inches. Every man tends to go, yes. That is advertising's equivalent. I must have watched that 600 times. When I first saw a script, someone sent me a copy of the script, and I was going, Jesus, I look like that man in the swimming trunks. It was just fantastic. But there was a lot of cultural provocation that was focused on that campaign. One was the fact that America is dying. It's in a bad state. And the worst perceived state was Detroit. Those poor people in Detroit, those poor people in Detroit. And Detroit don't want that. They can't have that. Detroit need to fight to survive. So Detroit said, okay, let's fucking have a go. And Chrysler are the brand that did that. And the impact that's had, as an ad, that is an ad, okay? The impact that's had at Super Bowl was it was discussed in the Senate. The imported from Detroit, the whole attitude of Detroit basically saying, we're fucking all right. Are you good enough for us? That is what that makes happen. It is an astounding piece of work. And the thing that was really good, I saw the VW Darth Vader. I love that, okay? We've got research to show that most people love that Darth Vader. You'd have to be Satan not to like that ad, okay? But very few people can remember who the brand is. We don't talk about Chrysler, and everyone can remember who the brand is. Because we're dealing in something that means something to people. There is too much sponsored jokes in advertising today. Means something. And the thing I'm especially proud of from us, Wieden and Kennedy, is we get shafted by a lot of people by saying, you're just into cool shit. We're not into cool shit, we're into clever shit. And that cultural provocation is at the heart of what we do. So I love that. Okay, this is another thing that we're big believers in, is release your brand voice. I do not mean that as a template, a nice-looking template. I personally think the best brand in Australia for brand voice, I hate to say this, Sydney, is Tourism Victoria. I think that's tourism, you'll love every piece of Victoria thing. I can see any ad, and in half a second I know who it is. And it's not the same style. It's like our Nike work. It's not the same style at all, yet they've captured the values and soul of that brand. And that allows people like Virgin to launch more companies in more categories than almost any other brand. And let me tell you this, Virgin are not the originators in this. Yamaha are the originators in this. Yamaha amaze me. Everyone that keeps saying that what happens when Steve Jobs dies, I understand the same thing. Maybe I shouldn't have said dies, because he might actually. I'll feel very guilty. What happens when he doesn't run the company anymore? Yamaha prove you can do it. Because let's look at Yamaha. They make motorbikes, very well-respected motorbikes. They make golf clubs, which is a bit different, and they're pretty respected. And they make concert fucking pianos, and they're still respected. That is cool shit, you know? And Virgin are doing it, but it's about a brand voice, and it's based on values, not a look and feel. Look and feel is very important, but when we say about brand voice, it literally is the heart and soul of the brand and defining that. And I did have some of our Levi's work. I'm going to make Jess feel guilty, but she did a much better job of it than I did, so we took it out. But we're trying to make sure that the brand voice of Levi's is actually the real heart and soul. And as you see the new campaigns that are coming out, you'll start seeing that, because we're going to start bringing it into this part of the world a bit more as well. Then keep the idea alive. I'm quite astounded how many companies put work out and then hope to fuck it works. And that's it. I think most people know our Old Spice work. What I think's really, like, is Chaz here? Or has he gone bored? Yeah, poor Chaz. Chaz is a very dear friend of mine, and I'm very glad that we've done Old Spice, because they've been far too good on links for far too long, and it's time they had some competition. The thing that's really interesting with the Old Spice stuff is the fact that, you know, too many people actually missed the cleverness in it. Because the first bit was we targeted women, not men. The second bit was we actually found out that women don't want their men to smell like women. They actually would like a man to smell a bit like a man. And thirdly, with the whole Twitter stuff, that is what really made it famous. We understood the medium and how people use it perfectly. So we ensured that there was a constant turnaround. And the thing that's really important is we have an approach when using social media of respond and react. In essence, we were playing Twitter table tennis. You hit a shot, we'll react to it, which means other people react in a different way, which means we react, and it keeps going. And for something that's a pretty low interest category, if we can get on Ellen and Oprah, I think we did pretty well. But the beautiful part, and there's two beautiful parts. One, sales actually went through the roof because people started giving a shit and asking for it. And secondly, it's from P&G. Too many people discredit P&G. And I understand why some people might say that, but we are only as good as what we're willing to push back on. The thing that's quite interesting at Wieden is we're quite painful to work with sometimes. We're all a bit too opinionated. But to do that with a brand like P&G, just as Chaz has done for BBH with links and that, it's phenomenal. I still find it quite hard that if you get all this success, why they don't do more of it. But we'll work on that. Nice Kylie and Jason shot there. Collaborate. Basically, what this is trying to say is I am not a huge fan in crowdsourcing. In fact, I'm quite alarmed at how quickly Adland's embraced crowdsourcing in its entirety. I'm a big believer in getting people involved. You have to get people involved. To give them the right to create everything, I just go, well, why the fuck is a client paying us? Aren't we supposed to be great at this? But what this actually is about is the ability to understand what we're shit at, not what we're always great at. The thing that I really miss is having, and the thing that's lovely, is that we have an internal media department. I love that. I absolutely love that. Because too many people, if you're in a certain discipline, think you can do it all. I'm a huge fan of digital, but I do find it funny when digital people say, yeah, we can solve everything. Don't worry about it. I meet direct marketing people, we can solve everything. Media companies, we can solve everything. It's bullshit. You have to collaborate, and you have to know what you're bad at, because then you learn new skills, and you can develop and riff off each other. And the example I'd give is the Smarties party calculator that I was involved in. This is a long time ago. Basically, Smarties were being kicked up the arse by M&Ms, and M&Ms were basically the Beavis and Butthead, which was really cool, and Smarties were really boring because they were educational. That was the basic issue. And the brief was, how do we make Smarties and education actually fun in the real world? That was basically the brief, really. So we found toy manufacturers, and we started talking to them. Now, we could think we could do it, and maybe, every now and then we could do it. But the trouble is, our attitude on everything is, we can do it better than a professional. No word of a lie. I once worked with somebody who we got this weird brief to help design a casino. It was actually fascinating. And they wanted some understanding of people's attitudes and mindset. And a guy I worked with said, I could do that better. And I was like, fucking hell, it's a building, But we've just got to embrace other people and understand that we don't know it all, and we can do more by actually working with people, which leads to being responsible. I genuinely believe that the communication industry can help make the world a better place. I wrote a paper a long time ago called Social Capitalism, which is a big believer of what we can actually do. And we've seen that. And the Braddock stuff is an example of that. But at the heart of it, you've got to make the client money. And you've got to do it in their time frame as well. What I loved today about the Times of India stuff was the justification, because it was an awesome, and the client said this, awesome. And it was simply, it gives us credibility. So when the next stories come, we will be brought in first. That is a commercial goal. And they did it that way. And I hate to say it, but I think that came because they were dealing not with the marketing person. And it's hard for a marketing person because they are charged with marketing the company with a specific goal. When you deal with the CEO, it often changes things. But Adland is too quick to say, we want to do it all, or we want to create this stuff without any understanding of the issues and no responsibility in terms of timing or budget. If we do that, we can make things happen. The moped stuff was a result of basically working together, but answering their problems, and we were doing this other stuff in the background. And it still hasn't happened, but we're getting closer. We're not as close as we were last year, but we're getting closer. So being responsible, I think, is really important because too many of us live in fantasy land. We live in the fantasy land of our idea is the best idea, ignore everyone. My Virgin client once gave me a great quote, and he said, Rob, I think that turnover is vanity, profit is sanity. Talk to me about profits. Don't talk to me about turnover. And that's the same issue I have with awareness. I get really pissed off with awareness. You know, I know who the Nazis are. It doesn't mean I'm going to fucking join them. I might look like I might join them, but I'm not going to join them. So we've got to just understand business because we've lost our seat at the boardroom table for one reason. We don't talk in terms of what they want. But we, as an industry, know more about people, what they're feeling, and how to motivate them than any other fucking industry. It is not bad to talk about money. It's not bad to talk about business. It's actually how you make it and what they do with it. They're the most important factors. But if we want to prove how good we are, I genuinely believe we are awesome. And I have to say, there's stuff in Australia. If you look at Earth Hour, that originated here. It's fucking phenomenal. We can do that, but we've just got to be a bit more realistic because sometimes I think we've got ahead of our asses. And finally, be brilliant. So we have this attitude of the work comes first. And when I say the work, I mean it in the broadest terms possible, from thinking to doing to whatever you do. And one of the things that I'm a big believer in is there's a documentary called Z Channel. It's very weird, but it's good. And he said one thing. They were one of the first cable networks on the West Coast. He said, we always targeted the highest common denominator, not the lowest, because the highest common denominator have got more money, and that's actually who people want. And I agree with Chaz in terms of brand leadership. I do. But I don't agree with him or Steve Jobs or a whole bunch of others that people don't know what they want. What I think is they don't know how to say it. But that doesn't mean you have to pamper to them. It's just about understand where they're going, and then you take the leadership position. But if you're going to do that, make sure you're brilliant, because you will be judged in everything that you do, in everything that you'll do. Which goes back to Henry Ford. And why would I spank him on the bum and make him sit on the naughty step? Because, as I said, he believed the public were too stupid to know what they wanted. Because he said, if I asked them, they'd say a faster horse. And I would say, if I was given a brief, you know, find out what people want, and people were saying, I'd want a faster horse, I would say, well, they want to get from point A to point B quicker. I would say they're telling you loud and fucking clear what they want. The issue is, how are we going to do it? And you know what? Maybe you could have bred a faster horse. Maybe you could. Or maybe you could go, I'm going to invent something and call it the car or the plane. But to say that people don't know what they want, I think is wrong. I absolutely agree that insights cannot just come from one place. I've been a huge advocate in looking at insights in a number of areas. But without doubt, it helps drive everything. And all the ideas I've taken you through, all the ideas that everyone has gone through today has had insight at the heart of it. And that's why I genuinely believe without it, we have literally got nothing. We've got indulgence. We have got indulgence. And for people who say, and there's lots of people, especially in London at the moment, that are saying insight basically is old and boring, I think they're basically talking shit. They're looking in the wrong places, and they're asking the wrong questions. And they're also maybe adopting, to Chaz's point again, a process that is driving people down that factor. And that's one of the things I love about BBH, us, and a bunch of other agencies around here, because they don't have a proprietary tool. Emphasis on the tool. You know, it's at the heart of it, if we want to be about creativity and imagination, which we are because it can change everything, we often forget the importance of the word insight. And without insight, literally, it's not commercial creativity, it's luck. And that's why I genuinely believe if you have creative intelligence, you can change the world. I absolutely believe if you have creative intelligence, you can change the world. So I have 3 things I want to leave you with. This is a request. I don't know if there are any clients in the room, but if there are, I would ask you to give your agencies problems and an open mind, as opposed to a predefined solution and an expectation of what you get back. Number 2, to all the people who are in agencies here, I would ask you that you show how fucking brilliant we can be. I have to say, and this will be very unpopular, I think a lot of the senior management are to blame in a lot of these things. I think they've got a very big challenge and a tough job, but we have sold creativity down the river. And it's all we've fucking got, and it's brilliant. And as much as I'm a planner, I judge everything on output. I couldn't give a fuck how amazing the paper is on the inside if it produces blandness. We've got to fight for our lives. So if you're an agency, let's show how great we are. And number 3, to anyone in the room, the thing is, I found out it's quite expensive, this thing, so I don't know how many people here are at different levels and stuff, but this is where you can laugh now, Scott, I'm going to have my rant. 7 years ago, I worked in this country, and nobody gave me a job. Not one person would give me a job. I was argumentative, I was dealing in fantasy land, I was too problematic, and I would be too challenging to clients. 7 years ago. If it wasn't for Mark Sarif, who is the best planner in the world, who's over there, and he is the best planner in the world, Darren Devlin, who might not be the best creative in the world, but he's one of them, and to Leslie Cheng, I would have been fucked. And what I would say is, I actually don't care if you disagree with everything I say. That's fine. You know what? The things that I've talked to you about today are not things from Wieden and Kendi, they're things from me, and they're things I felt 10 years ago, not even 2 years ago. If you disagree with everything, that's fine. But if you believe in something and your boss is telling you you're wrong, I encourage you to find out if you're wrong for yourself rather than be shut off. I really encourage that because 7 years later, I'm on a stage shouting a lot. And if I can do it, fuck me, anybody can do it. That's really true. But I really think it's important because this is an amazing country and it's produced amazing things and amazing work. But if we continue to close our mind off to new thinking, new attitudes, and new countries' influence, we're going to screw ourselves up. And we're too good to let that happen. Thank you very much indeed.